Yesterday, Tim Keller went home to heaven to be with the Lord. Michael Keller, his son, put out on Twitter his words from a few nights ago. He said, "I'm thankful for all the people who've prayed for me over the years. I'm thankful for my family that loves me. I'm thankful for the time that God has given me, but I'm ready to see Jesus. I can't wait to see Jesus. Send me home." Some of his last words, according to Michael, were, "There is no downside for me leaving, not in the slightest." A lot of us have been reflecting upon Tim's legacy on social media and what we learned from him, and this most basic thing is just an encouragement and reminder that this life is short. And how awesome is it to live in such a way? You know, Jim Elliot used to say, live in such a way that when it comes time to die, all you have to do is die. You know, in other words, don't leave loose ends that you need to repair and repent of at the end, but just live wholeheartedly for Christ to make a dent in this world for him and for his kingdom. And so it's meaningful for me. I think the reason why Tim's ministry and life means so much to so many in my generation, I'm going to be 40 next month. So there's this sense of this very sobering feeling of generational transition. My wife and I were talking about how when people who are your friends have parents who start to die, you start to realize like, oh, now we're the oldest. We're getting to be that point where we're the oldest. People are looking to us, you know. We're in the driver's seat now. It's that kind of sobering feeling. It's like that scene in the beginning of Star Trek. I think it was the 2008. I always talk about this movie, even though I'm not a big Star Trek fan. But basically, the captain's going off to die, probably, and he says to Jim, he says, "You're the captain now." It's kind of like, woo, gulp. But I feel that sense for our generation. It's like, so we've learned so much from Tim and from others in his generation. You know, there's this sense of, I put out a tweet like this where basically, I'll try to remember to put it up. I was basically saying Tim's legacy for us wasn't just his gifts, his insights. You know, I've learned so much from him, and I've talked about that in other videos, his sermons, his books, but it was his character that maybe is the best gift to us, and the reason why his life and ministry is so meaningful to many in my generation, because we're in a time of disillusionment. So many people, there's been so much uncovering of scandal, you know, and so there's so much cynicism. So when you see someone who finishes well with solid integrity, that's really meaningful as something to aspire after and appreciate. And you can just read this, there's so many testimonies of people on Twitter and elsewhere sharing about what he meant to them. And one of the things that stood out is just his kindness and his humility, his generosity with his time to others, just being a down-to-earth person. You know, it's a wonderful thing when someone has a huge influence and platform, but they're not an egomaniac. They're just a kind person, and they have good godly character. And I'm thankful to Tim Keller for his ministry, but for who he was as a person, even more for his character. And so what I'm feeling now, what I'm reflecting upon now, is that sobering feeling of now it's our turn, my generation. Now it's our turn to do in our time what Tim did in his time, and that's bring the gospel into new demographics, new cultures. There are so many people right now who desperately need the gospel. The needs are huge right now. And so now it's our turn to push forward with the gospel and ask the Lord, how do we spend our lives so that we are just all out? You know, this life is short. How happy is this thought? Is there anything better to live your life for than this? To live all out for Christ, so that when you get to the end, and here's the thing, I really believe this, that you won't always see the fruit right away. The fruit of someone's life and your ministry, you know, it takes some time sometimes. A lot of times. So there's almost a sense of walking by faith for how the Lord is going to use your efforts. But our part is not to produce the fruit ourselves or necessarily even discern it and see it, but just to be faithful to God and serve God. So we say, Lord, I want to serve you in every way I can. I want to just like remember that life is so short. One day people will be talking about our legacy, and I want to just tilt forward so that everything about my life is deployed for your purposes, because there is nothing happier in all of life than to think about getting to the end and hearing these words, "Well done, good and faithful servant." That's worth anything. That's worth everything. So now is our time to do in our generation what Tim modeled for us, and that's bringing the gospel to people who so desperately need it. So I'm thankful for Tim's life and legacy, and I invite the people in my generation to say, let's pick up the baton and move forward. And there are so many people out there. I mean, honestly, final thought. I was talking with a friend recently, and he was saying that the rising generation, people in college right now, for example, a lot of the debates that we're aware of in Christianity, they don't even know anything about. They don't know, he was saying they don't know who Rob Bell is. They don't know who N.T. Wright is. They don't know the conversations. A lot of it is just total ignorance. People just have no understanding of Christianity. They're just totally spiritually ignorant of what the gospel is. And so there's this rising generation that we now have the privilege to try to bring the gospel to. What better way to spend our lives than to go all out doing our best to do that? And Tim's life and his finishing well motivates me to want to do that and to invite others to do the same.